Greetings folks, Eeler here. It's been a couple of weeks since I've put a video up on the channel. I did pre-announce this video last week, but unfortunately didn't get a chance to finish it before I had to head off and visit my younger daughter at her college for family weekend. So that was definitely fun, and now that I'm back, I'm able to wrap up this video or this replay and share it with you. This is a division replay with a trio of Tier 9 Tech Tree U.S. Navy ships. We have Jimmy Jazz in the USS Fletcher, Angry Ace in the USS Seattle, and myself in the USS Iowa. We are in a Tier 10 domination match on Trap. There is one Tier 8 aircraft carrier per team and lots of battleships. Jimmy Jazz's build in the Fletcher is mostly an AA build. He has the torpedo tubes modification 3 upgrade in slot 6 for faster reload on his torpedoes. Angry Ace's build is mostly about the guns with IFHE and the main battery modification 3 upgrade to get faster reload on his main battery. And then my build in the Iowa is pretty much a standard tank build. I do have John Doe on this ship, so I take advantage of the buffed expert marksman skill. This is going to be a very good match in terms of contribution from members of both teams. And we're going to want to keep an eye on the opposing Smolensk. We will not, at least our division won't encounter him until fairly late in the battle, but this player's name is going to pop up in chat as he reaches certain achievements fairly quickly, actually. So probably a reflection of the very powerful nature of the Smolensk. We started from my perspective in the Iowa as the three of us are headed to the Charlie Cap. We've switched to Jimmy Jazz's perspective in the Fletcher as he's moved into Charlie, so far uncontested, but now he is contested. And obviously he has the radio location skill. As I mentioned in my anti-air build video from a few weeks ago, Jimmy Jazz and I have basically swapped out what used to be the manual AA skill for radio location on our AA destroyers. And that's going to definitely give Jimmy Jazz and our team and our division some good knowledge about the location and positioning of the opposing team. Jimmy Jazz has done the classic get your stern pointed to the center of the cap and be ready to get out in case torpedoes come, and obviously with the radio location he has a general bearing on where the torps would be coming from. We switched to Angry Ace's perspective in the Seattle. This is kind of a classic position for a light cruiser, especially one that has shell arcs that allow it to fire over islands quite easily, and the Seattle definitely fits this. Now, my experience with the Seattle, and I know this is Angry Ace's perspective as well, is that even though the description of the shells and the velocity out of the rifles and so on are theoretically identical to what we see in other U.S. Navy light cruisers like the Worcester and the Cleveland, we have found that the ballistics are actually quite a bit worse than some of her peers. So we switched over briefly to Jimmy Jazz's perspective as he sent torpedoes in the direction of smoke where we know the Haragumo is, and then we switched to my perspective as I'm approaching the smoke as well. We just saw the torpedoes from the Haragumo, and so I'm looking to try to keep basically some island between me and the destroyer so I avoid a further potential torpedo strike. We give up first blood to the opposing team with the opposing Iowa taking out our Neptune. So our team is already down one ship, and we don't have a cap yet. You'll notice that from tactically at Alpha, our team is significantly outnumbered, and we are actually going to lose that south flank very, very rapidly. Switch back to Jimmy Jazz's perspective as he is going to indeed land torpedoes on the Haragumo and finish off the Haragumo. So another important lesson, folks, to not sit in your smoke, especially if you are perpendicular to the position of a destroyer or a suspected destroyer. Switch briefly back to Angry Ace's perspective in the Seattle. as he's going to push forward here and try to help Jimmy Jazz with either any AA. I also suspected that he may have been intending to move forward to try to get some radar on the Haragumo, but at this point it's no longer needed. Switch back to Jimmy Jazz's perspective briefly here as he's sending torpedoes on the position of the opposing Seattle and the Massachusetts, so we'll keep an eye on him. Now my perspective here, which we're just switching to, I'm going sort of, in my opinion, like significantly along the edge of the map, which I usually don't like doing, especially as a battleship. Part of my job is to be absorbing shots for the team. And when you sail around islands like this, you're taking yourself out of the battle. Uh, but in this case, I'm trying to get into a flanking position on the opposing Seattle and the Massachusetts, especially now that the opposing destroyer threat is largely taken care of. And this is, again, a reflection of either my terrible aiming or just bad RNG or something, but I had a full broadside shot on the Seattle and got 4 overpen. So very frustrating. In fact, my next couple of salvos will continue to be quite frustrating. And we're going to switch over back to Jimmy Jazz's perspective here in a moment, as he is going to land some torpedoes. In fact, I think he already did on the Massachusetts. But now we've gone to Angry Ace's perspective, as the Massachusetts is burning and he took torpedoes and he's basically wildly overextended, and Angry Ace is going to get the kill here. So the second kill that our division brings home for our team. Our team does have we did briefly have a 2-ship advantage. We just lost another ship, the Cossack. And here I was actually quite afraid that the Seattle was going to ram me. Fortunately, he turned back in. He he decided to avoid the ram, but he's decided to remain broadside to me. And I'm going to swing my guns around here. They are loaded. Just want to get a full salvo here and try to hopefully not get just overpens, and as luck would have it, I don't. I get 3 nice fat citadels, land a devastating strike on the Seattle, and have now eliminated pretty much the entire north flank of the opposing team. So right now, tactically, our team isn't really in a very good position. As I mentioned at Alpha, our team was pretty well wiped out there. We do have a single Worcester that is retreating, but he is seriously outnumbered, and the opposing team is going to be able to finish him off fairly quickly here. He's going to come in a crossfire between the opposing ships that are coming out of Alpha and the Mogador, which is in the Bravo cap. So you can see Jimmy Jazz here is pinged on the map. He's asking the carrier, our carrier, to keep eyes on the Mogador so that we can try to eliminate him. We do lose our gearing to the Mogador, so we have essentially no representation in the middle of the map. We are too heavily concentrated in the north. You may have noticed in chat earlier that our allied Kremlin, which went to Alpha and went down, had previously asked our team to move south to Bravo, and he is absolutely correct. We are too concentrated in the north. We need to get some center map control, and so that's exactly where we're headed at this point. The Mogador is going to be, again, another thorn in our side. He's going to finish off the Worcester, and that is going to leave our team with no representation in the middle of the map, essentially. And we're going to need to get into the Bravo cap as quickly as possible. Now, we do technically have a lead. We have a 1-ship advantage, but we don't have, like I said, we're too far north. We're too much concentrated there. So Jimmy Jazz and Angry Ace and I are going to move south here to Bravo. The plan is to have Jimmy Jazz get into the cap to at least contest it, and to drop some smoke for Angry Ace, who's immediately behind him in this Seattle, so that we can radar the Mogador and ideally take him out. But if all we can do at this point is at least chase him out of the cap, that's almost as well. We really need to get another cap here, and here we're coming under some aerial attack from the opposing carrier. And the planes are gone. So Jimmy Jazz has now slipped into the cap, and he's going to start dropping smoke here and then Angry Ace in the Seattle is going to follow behind him to get in a position where he can be concealed, but then also radar the entire Bravo cap, and we can try to push the Mogador out of the cap. Now, the other tactical thing I should point out is on the east side of the map, our allied Bismarck is essentially is basically chasing the opposing Montana. And normally I would say that's not a good thing because the Bismarck is not focusing on the objective. But in this case, after I thought about it and rewatched the replay, it isn't necessarily a bad thing because basically what he's doing is the Montana is just constantly retreating and taking himself further and further away from being able to help his team establish some center map control. Here we switch to Angry Ace's perspective in the Seattle, and he has lit up the Mogador with radar. He's going to get a couple of salvos off here, but really the main challenge is, well, again, ideally sink the Mogador. In fact, you can see that the Allied carrier is trying to drop him with torpedoes, but that's probably fairly fruitless because the Mogador is a very fast ship, and in fact is probably faster than the torpedoes. But we've at least chased the Mogador out of the cap, and we're able to now take the Bravo cap from the opposing team. So that will help. But coming back to the situation with our allied Bismarck, which is in the Gulf 7 sector, and he's chasing the Montana, which is a couple of sectors south of him. He's kind of, even though it's not really playing to the objective, the Bismarck is at least keeping the Montana from engaging and trying to help establish some center map control. So we've at least sort of taken that tier 10 battleship out of the game, at least for a little while. Unfortunately, the Bismarck is going to lose in that exchange, but he will have chased the Montana so far south that it will take quite a while for the Montana to get back into the game. So we've switched over to Jimmy Jazz's perspective as the next major threat is these three very healthy ships that are, or quite healthy ships that are on the west side of Bravo, the Smolensk that I mentioned earlier, and the Missouri and the Gascon, which are all over here. Now you'll notice the Iowa, the Allied Iowa. There, in fact, we just lost the Bismarck to the Montana that I mentioned earlier. Notice the Allied Iowa, which is, and the Allied North Carolina, which are to Jimmy Jazz's starboard side. They were both very healthy until not too long ago, but they've taken a serious beating between the Smolensk and the two opposing battleships. But the North Carolina is almost dead, but he's actually, I think he ends up surviving for a little while longer. Jimmy Jazz does get a torpedo on the opposing Missouri with some flooding, and he was hoping to be able to clip the Smolensk, but he didn't have that benefit. Now we switch to my perspective in the Iowa as I'm looking to come over here and basically try to provide some additional defense against the opposing ships. Originally was going to fire on one of the battleships, but then the Mogador shows up and he's clearly the preferred target. And I end up taking down the Mogador for my second kill of the game, which definitely helps our team. So we again are back to a one ship advantage. We do hold two caps. We have a reasonable lead, but at this point again it could be anybody's game. We switched over to Angry Ace's perspective as he's trying to get some shots in on the Smolensk. You can see the fire from the Smolensk just pouring in on our Iowa. Our Iowa, excuse me, it was just flat broadside to the Missouri as well, and he's now been eliminated. So now we're even on ships. Again, we still hold a lead with two caps, and really at this point our job is to defend the caps. Our allied Kaga, which you can see in the Alpha 5 sector, now moving to Alpha 6, he waited, in my opinion, he waited too long to start moving. He is now visible to the opposing team. The opposing team is putting fire on him. Here, Angry Ace is able to help get the Missouri down. But here you can also see that the opposing Montana is now starting to move back toward challenging Bravo. Our North Carolina did survive originally, but is now going to get into an engagement with the Montana, which unfortunately he's going to lose. And Angry Ace is going to get turned around here to try to help the North Carolina help finish off the Montana. So Jimmy Jazz and myself are on the south side of Charlie, looking to at least defend that cap. There's not much we can do to try to help the Kaga, because the Kaga is simply exposed to both the Smolensk and the Gascon, and so at this point, really, the Kaga is probably a lost cause. He should have been moving earlier, but at this point, that's all, water under the bridge. There's not too much that we can do at this point. The Montana is wearing away the North Carolina. The North Carolina is also coming under aerial attack from the opposing carrier, and he is going to end up going down here very shortly. Now you notice that Angry Ace is being targeted. He's not being targeted by the Montana. He's being targeted by the opposing Smolensk, and we're going to see some fire coming in from the Smolensk here very shortly. There goes the North Carolina, and we're going to see a demonstration of how effective the Smolensk is. Its DPM is just stupidly good. Fortunately, Angry Ace is able to sort of go bow in here, but the Montana, again, is not targeting him. And I think with this salvo, Angry Ace is going to finish off the Montana, as he does. And so that is going to be his second kill. And now he's got to turn away from the Smolensk, because the Smolensk is already taken out almost half of his remaining health in those few short seconds. And he wants to just get back into some cover, get a heal in. We've come back to Jimmy Jazz's perspective, as he's mainly just been working as a sentry to keep things spotted, and try to deny area and keep the opposing team from pushing in. Now, fortunately, our Kaga was able to get behind some island cover so that he was not finished off before the opposing team was able to sink him. And then Angry Ace and I are in a position where we want to try to set up so that we force the Smolensk and the Gascon to be in a crossfire. So Angry Ace is going to basically stay in the position where he is right now, where he can fire over terrain with concealment and be able to put fire on, or he's going to try to move into a position where he can put fire on the Gascon. And then myself and the Iowa, whose perspective we just switched to, I want to get in a position where I'm on the north side of Bravo, where I can force a crossfire situation. Now, I have a broadside shot here on the Smolensk. And again, this is a reflection, frankly, of just some poor aiming. I am still not 100% comfortable with the ballistics on the U.S. Navy battleships. And so I frankly missed a very good opportunity to get a dove strike on the Smolensk, or at least take out a lot more of his health, and I only get one overpen. So that was a very frustrating salvo. The Smolensk knows well enough now to stay behind that island and not expose himself to another salvo from me. I think he suspects, he knows he was very lucky to have only received one overpen in that salvo that I sent. Switch back to Jimmy Jazz's perspective, as he has sent torpedoes on the opposing Gascon. Gascon did not change direction or speed, and Jimmy Jazz is able to land torpedoes and sink the Gascon. So our team now has a very healthy lead. We're down to almost 1 minute. But the next threat here, at least in terms of our team's survival, although at this point we were expecting we would win, would be the Smolensk. Now, the Smolensk has now just earned AA Defense Expert in combination with Wither and Confederate and High Caliber already. And here he comes out again and I get another broadside shot opportunity. And again, I'm expecting this has got to be better, and I only get 2 overpens. So again, I don't know if I'm aiming poorly or it's just RNG. I do know that the recommendation from Euro and other community contributors is that if you're broadside in the Smolensk, you'll just take mostly overpens, and that seems to have been the case here. But you can see how quickly the Smolensk is kind of erasing my health here with his with his salvos. I also know that torpedoes are coming. I'd finally get a reasonably decent salvo through his bow. We're down to the last few seconds here. At this point, our team isn't going to lose, but Angry Ace is going to get the kill here on the Smolensk, who was forced to be broadside to him. So our team ends up winning here. We, at the end of time, end of regulation, with top 3 XP for the game. Jimmy Jazz at the top, which is very typical of him. He's a very good destroyer player. So thank you, Jimmy, for once again excellent services as a destroyer player. So I'll leave the results up for all of all the members of our division for you to peruse. Hope you found the replay and the commentary interesting. I know this was a long match, but hopefully a good one at that. And with that, we hope to see you out there, and we wish you happy sailing.